Hey everyone, how's it going? This is Max coming to you from a scorching hot Saturday afternoon here in sunny Sydney, Australia. And underneath this car cover, I have an exceedingly rare Pontiac Firebird that I've spent the better half of a decade trying to find and track down. Now, some of you already know what's underneath this car cover, but for those of you who don't know, this is a Denison Carl Mecham modified Macho T, number 46 to be specific. And the purpose of this video is more or less to document the original state I found the car in from when I pulled it out of a paddock in Victoria. So let's take the car cover off and see what's underneath the hood. Okay, now let's take a look at one of the most important parts of looking at any collectible Trans Am, having the original driveline. And I'm extremely pleased to say this car has the original 4-speed WC numbers matching W72 motor. Now, some of the more glaring obvious problems here is that it's got some garbage Holley carburetor on it that's probably going to go straight in the bin. The original W72 intake is gone, and it does have an aluminium Edelbrock Performer Pontiac intake, so it at least is one of those Trans Am specific ones that will accommodate the factory air cleaner. Now, one of the big glaring things, I'm sure a lot of the American viewers are going to notice this, how come the brake booster's over here? Well, if you wanted to drive a Trans Am on the roads in Australia back in the 80s, 90s and the early 2000s, the car had to be converted to right-hand drive, and that's what you see here. Now, the brake booster and the steering column has all moved over to this side, and if we have a closer look, you'll notice it's got a WB Holden or a HQ Holden steering box and assembly in there. A bit of a problem, you've gone from a WS6 King of the Hill handling car to a Holden Taxi equivalent steering box, so is it going to handle as well as it used to from factory? Probably not, but we'll see what else we can do about that. Now, having the original numbers matching engine is an absolute plus, but an engine's supposed to run, and let me tell you, this thing is stuck solid. I've taken some of the plugs out, I've drowned the cylinders with penetrant, but I haven't really pushed my luck with a breaker bar as of yet because this motor really is stuck solid. Having a closer look at this water pump assembly and all the pulleys on this motor, I'd actually be shocked if I'd get away with getting this thing pulled over with a breaker bar. It's looking like it's going to need to be a complete teardown. So I certainly haven't tried to run it. I wouldn't be too excited to either, but fingers crossed it's not going to be any tremendous level of damage. Now, the motor certainly has been rebuilt in the past. It was done approximately 15 years ago, and according to the previous owner, Mick Webb or Les Small or some sort of Ford NASCAR engine builder had a go at this thing however many years ago. Have they done a good job is a completely different question, and has the motor survived is also another one. Now, if we have another look at the engine bay on the opposite side, you'll see this random ductwork thing going on over here. Now, a lot of the right-hand drive converted Firebirds did have the air conditioning unit shifted over to the other side. In this case, the previous owner has completely binned all of the air conditioning brackets, compressor, and HVAC assembly. So, in place of it, there's like an air conditioning industrial duct that goes to the heat extractor on the fender. Don't know what they were thinking with that. It's all going in the bin. The firewall is a bit mangled here too. You can see that they've pop riveted in some new sheet metal there to try and replace it or patch the holes that would have been there from the left-hand drive steering column, but all problems we're going to have to look at later on. Another really cool plus is it has the original chrome W72 valve covers. The alternator is the date code original 400 alternator. Even the radiator is the original 4-speed manual radiator too. So it was really surprising to see how much of the original driveline did survive. Of course, down underneath there, underneath the transmission tunnel, we have the original Borg-Warner Super T10 4-speed manual as well. I'm hoping this distributor is also going to be the correct date-coded W72 Dizzy, because as we all know, W72 gear is really becoming pricey. One of the big things that's definitely going to hammer into the budget is finding an original W72 4-speed quadrajet. They're almost becoming as rare as the early Ram Air stuff now, and they've got a price tag to match as well. So let's mosey on over to the interior and see what's going on over in there. So here we are in the interior cabin. Now, obviously you'll see that this is not your standard Firebird interior. We've got this big glaringly obvious change that it's actually right-hand drive. The steering column has been moved over to the right-hand side and it has its own custom-made right-hand drive dash wrapped in some form of leather or vinyl. Now, it does have the original glove box, it does have the original deluxe interior grab handle. A lot of the interior actually did survive. It does retain the original headliner, which is, well, condition pending. It does have the original D34 optional sun visor mirror as well. So, random parts of it have actually managed to survive the last 40 years. The original door trims, the seats are even in fantastic condition. And not to mention, have a look at the condition of the console. Now, speaking of the console, we do have the original 4-speed Hurst shifter in here as well. And after drowning the bottom half of this thing in lubricant and oils, it's actually freed up quite a bit. Originally, we couldn't really get the gearbox to move into gear, but it now does seem to shift through all the gears relatively reasonably. So at least we know the gearbox has been freed up. The DKM Macho steering horn button is missing, but I do have a brand new reproduction on the way. Fortunately, the numbered DKM plaque on the console has survived and does look fantastic. So, some things of concern, however, is if we have a look at the underneath of the dash over here, we're going to see a few different issues that are going to cause a lot more electronic problems down the line. So let's have a closer look what's going on under there. Now, here underneath the steering column, there's a few things to note. There's some sort of aftermarket switch with a light in it, which could possibly be something to do with an immobilizer. There's also another push button start, perhaps, up here as well. And the speedo cable's dangling down here. So, a lot of it looks like it was recently pulled apart for whatever reason, and I can imagine there's going to be a heap of electrical issues underneath here. So, getting the motor running will be one thing. Getting the car to actually start, indicate, turn, shift, have everything function properly looks like it's going to be a completely different ordeal as well. So there's a lot going on underneath there. It's going to need a lot of work. Now let's have a better look at the bodywork and the overall state of the car. Now, some things did survive incredibly well, like the lower half of the car and the Macho TA decals actually look fantastic, and I'd really like to preserve those the way they are. Although at the same time, it does look like parts of the car have been repainted. It feels like there might be another layer of paint underneath it here, and the DKM46 logos are missing off both sides on each fender. Overall, the body has, well, it does look like a car that's been sitting in a field with a tarp over it, but some parts have survived quite well. Let's have a better look at the rear end of the car. Now, the deck lid and the trunk lid look absolutely fantastic. This has to be the original decals, and the spoiler looks to be in fantastic shape. The trunk lid itself is also nice and solid. There doesn't appear to be any rust holes on it at all. A little bit around the surface here, but nothing 10 seconds of sandpaper wouldn't fix. The trunk channel, however, is absolutely finished. Now, this side's okay, but there's rust holes all the way through here, and on this side, you can put your whole hand through there to go touch the inner quarter. If we take a closer look inside the boot, the floor seems to be solid in some parts and then completely eaten away in others. You'll see a lot closer up that this section here is pretty toast, and it's definitely going to need a donor or patch panel to try and save that. Now, the good thing is the major parts of the trunk floor seem to be in relatively good shape. And what I'm counting on is that that would have kept the build sheet alive a little bit longer, because I don't think the tank's ever been out, and I'm hoping the original build sheet's still going to be on top of the petrol tank. Aside from that, the inside of the quarters and the roof of the parcel tray all seem to be pretty decent. Let's have a look at those quarters. Now, if we're going to look at the left-hand quarter, look, it looks pretty bad on the surface, but realistically, that sail panel seems to be pretty solid. The roof section looks to be in great shape. And if we look a little bit lower down and have a look at the base of the quarter, that seems to be in pretty good condition too. Alright, if we're looking at the right hand quarter, without a shadow of a doubt, this thing's in major trouble. Having a look down the bottom, it's completely eaten away. And I think it goes without saying, it's going to need a completely brand new right hand side quarter. Alright, we're down here underneath the tail end of the car, and to be honest, I've definitely seen a lot worse. The tail panels are normally eaten away around here, and yeah, sure, there's definitely some rust coming off it, but definitely not as bad as some of the others I've seen. What's really awesome to see is all 4 original Coney adjustable shocks are still on this car, and that was something that was included on a lot of the Macho TAs. The leaf springs, yeah, they're definitely in a bit of trouble, and the rear sway bar at the back seems to still be a bit how you going, but it is the original WS6 bar, so we'll try and save it. Aside from that, it does retain the original W72 dual muffler exhaust system. Even the modified catalytic converter is still there as well, so it's pretty interesting to see that survive. But let's have a look and see what else is going on this thing. Something else that was pretty awesome to find on this car was it has all 4 original WS6 aluminium 15x8 snowflake wheels. And right behind those 2 wheels on the back, we've got the original GM 10-bolt diff. But what's special about this diff is it's a limited slip 3.42 rear gear diff. Now, in the late 70s, it was pretty hard to get that diff. The only way to get a ratio that tall was if you had the 305 in California in 8081, or you had a 4-speed W72 in 1978. And lo and behold, it's still in there. That being said though, the drum brakes on the rear were absolutely terrible. They were frozen shut. It took 5 hours to get that drum off. So everything back there is going to need major work to get roadworthy. Well, if you were curious to know what happens to a Trans Am that you ditch out in a paddock with a tarp over it for a good couple of years, here's your answer. Ideally, I do want to make a video regarding the timeline of how this car made its way down to Australia, what happened to it over the last 20 years, and how I tracked it down and found it. But I think the next video I'm going to cover is what we're going to do with this engine, whether we can get it started or whether it's going to need to be completely torn down. But until then, stay tuned, thanks for watching, and hey, this is what's happened to the Macho TA that made its way down under. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.